I'm still not sure if I want to tip my barista. Did you hit record? Are we going?
Yeah, we're going.
I have been taking inventory the past 2 years. Every time my birthday rolls around, I make sure to remember who has wished me a happy birthday from the Collider Video office, from Schmoes Know, from the crew. And this year, it was only Copster and Cody. That was it from that entire team in that building. Last year, I think RB3 and Ace. So it took me 2 years to get all of the wangers. 2 years it took all of the wangers to wish me a happy birthday once. Do better. Do better. Hey, Jay, how are you?
Is that it? Is that the response? Listen, I'm 30 now. I gave you a piece of wisdom when you told me this revelation. Why don't you reveal to the people what my piece of wisdom was when you told me this?
It's not a piece of wisdom that was lost on me. I 100% agree, and I could have told you that even when I turned like 22 or 23. It's that the older you get, the less special that birthdays are. But I'm holding my my Schmoes Know crew accountable here. Schmoville was great, by the way. I wanted to make sure that I shout out everyone in Schmoville who wished me a happy birthday. I greatly appreciate it. That was really nice. So thank you for that. And you apparently got me a present, and I can definitely wait to find out what it is, because I'm not happy that you got me something.
Yeah, for sure. I still need to go pick that up, by the way. My presence is a present, as Kanye would say. Listen, the whole thing about you knowing what that age, wisdom, revelation was. One thing I've learned about you in the year that we've been doing hardcore podcasting together, our friendship is whatever, but the hardcore podcasting, I've learned that you might know some things, but when I actually verbalize it, or especially when somebody else verbalizes things that I've told you, you're like, yeah, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm like, okay.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but you're not interesting until you talk after a theme song is played, so let's do that. Welcome to After Schmoe, the Schmoes Know After Show that nobody pays attention to until the song has played. My name is Ryan Snelling.
My name is Jaye Williams, and my biggest takeaway from this week of Schmolider Universe is even though people just don't want us to talk about sight and sound, the people in this space have no problem legitimately copying every single thing that we do.
If we don't talk about sight and sound, who will?
I'm looking at you, Mark and Christian. You know, it's like they turned to themselves and they said, you know what? Those Ryan and Jay guys, they have something nice when they just podcast together with nobody else in the room. We should do that and act like they don't already do it.
Christian is trying to cover it up by saying it's going old school for them, but we all know that's a lie.
Yeah, look. You're not fooling anybody. If you guys need some notes, we'll be happy to give you notes like we do every week. No, I'm just kidding. Listen, I know we're going to get into it, but I've thoroughly enjoyed the last 2 weeks of Christian and Mark together. I kind of miss everybody else, but we'll talk about all that.
Christian and Mark act like they were the pioneers of this shit.
Why did you say it like that? Pioneers of this shit.
I didn't know what I wanted to say, and I'm just, as usual, just throwing out bullshit.
It's an odd time right now in the sort of the new media landscape. When I say that, I mean YouTube and podcasts and all of that.
Because the sexual
We've
harassment.
talked about it. Well, yeah, that for sure. You got to be careful what you say, who you touch. But it's also the fact that it's the end of the year. Everybody's making lists, and subscribers are leaving because you prefer one superhero film over another. And I don't know. People are just a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more laid back. Has that been your point of view towards Collider a little bit?
What?
Has it seemed more relaxed, more laid back? The fact that it's the year is winding down and people are busy, they're traveling and all that stuff?
Maybe. I don't know. It doesn't really feel any different. I'll be honest. I mean, I think Schmoes definitely feels different, but as far as Collider goes, I don't think it feels that tremendously different. I mean, I've spent this is what, year 3. So every December, every fall, every December kind of feels like this. I'm talking like I'm a seasoned veteran with Collider. I don't know. Maybe I am. I've pretty much been around as long as Collider Video has been, to my credit. Not so much the AMC stuff, but anyway. Did I answer your question? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's fine. Listen, we're also in this sort of realm and world where Collider is changing. It's evolving. We did away with daily shows, and except for Movie Talk, and we got the top 50 superheroes. What has life been like for you, having some time between then and now? How's your life been without TV Talk in it?
To be totally honest, I don't miss it, but that doesn't mean that whatever they end up doing, whatever comes next, as far as regarding television goes, that doesn't mean I don't welcome that. It's just I realize that, and I've been honest about it. Like, I was a champion for it to exist, but I didn't need to watch it daily. I've been very honest about it. But I definitely think it had a place, and I'm glad that they at least experimented with that. But I think they are figuring it out right now, and some version of TV Talk will be back soon. But and I totally welcome that. I don't have a problem with its existence, but I definitely did miss like Heroes being an hour long. I really, really missed that, and the fact that it's back to that, and we get it twice a week. That's a really, really happy medium for me. I'm really, really liking that, and I'm really excited. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm really excited to watch the 200th special. I'm going to probably watch it right after we record, actually, and then I'll watch Jedi Council, because I gave Christian Harloff one of my biggest Star Wars takes to date, and I'm hoping that he inserted it into Address the Council. What's the over and under number that Christian Harloff will address the council with my pitch, with my take?
I'm going to give a hard 0% because you're just the schmuck from After Schmoe. We're not allowed to enter any of the contests or the giveaways. I also feel like we're not allowed to enter the mailbag stuff. Listen, this is coming from the guy. You don't like appearing as a fan. You want to be acknowledged as a member of the crew and the gang. Do you really want them to read like your mailbag question or whatever on the other show?
No, I'm not talking about a mailbag. I'm talking about Address the Council, and then talk about, like, I was hoping that Christian, I sent him like 3 paragraphs of this whole thing that I had prepared. And I was praying to God he would respond with, make a video and I'll put it in the show. Because he's done it before. People have, like, it's kind of like with what Chris Hartwell does with Film Negative. Like,
right.
It's like a little guest segment that they do. And so I figured that, if he liked what I said about Star Wars, that he would give me my own Address the Council segment. But he didn't ask me to make a video, but I'm hoping he put it in the show.
You're hoping that one day you get one of those sort of references like they do with other people in this space, where they say, movie insider from Sight and Sound, Ryan Snelling, actually had a very interesting take on their podcast, which I listen to every single week, and it was blah, 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 blah. That will never happen. It's more likely for, I don't know, it's more likely for Christian to talk about my Drake take on Schmoes, I guess, than it is for him to take anything we say about the movie industry seriously.
I actually would, this is me being 100% honest, I would actually like us to find a way the After Schmoe could be implemented in Collider in some way, even if it is just a small plug. But I don't know where you would do that, because I can recognize that it would be very weird for Mark to close Movie Talk with, by the way, they're going to be talking about us on After Schmoe, or they're going to be talking about our film discussion this week. That doesn't really fit. So I don't know where you do that.
Yeah.
But there's got to be something else, because we talk about Collider kind of more so than the Schmoes Know Show. So I think the last time I got a shout out was when I asked Ellis to give a Charles Manson obit, and he kind of gave me a wink to the camera when that happened. It was really great. But yeah, anyway, I do think those moments are equally as funny and special.
I don't want to transition out of Collider stuff quite yet, but we do get some love in the Harpool quite a bit we'll talk about that in a minute. But listen,
before we
real quick, hang on, real quick with Collider.
I feel like you're hosting the show. What are you doing here?
No, just listen.
You've been hosting.
I have a point. Welcome to After Schmoe. Listen, Collider in general has been odd lately for me, just because of all the changes that are going on. This week we also had Christian on Movie Talk twice, which happens from time to time, but I felt like for the first time that Movie Talk took precedent over his carpool because we only have had one carpool this week. Is he already letting carpool go? Is my question.
No, not entirely. I think this was probably an outlier. I didn't really find a reason to text him about it and tell him that he needs to make some changes, for sure. I think that he still cares very much about it. That's why he got that phone mount, and he admitted on video that he should have had it all along. And in all seriousness, by the way, he doesn't need a mic. I don't know why he thinks he needs a mic. He never needed a mic. He still doesn't need a mic. Christian, don't worry about the mic. We don't need that. But I didn't want to go there yet because I wanted to address the fact that we were off last week. That's why I was trying to stop you. I wasn't ready to move on yet. We were off last week. Thanksgiving. We usually record on Thursdays, and obviously, there's that. But we did briefly talk about. We responded to the whole Starbucks thing. We had a segment on Sight and Sound's After Party, which is up right now on SK Podcast or SK Plus. Who am I, Roka? SK Plus podcast channel. We talked about After Schmoe actually pretty candidly. It wasn't even so much like a recap of the Schmoes Know Show as it was just our take on After Schmoe in general, which is not really a conversation everybody gets to hear. So I thought that was kind of cool. But I want to kind of briefly go over that, though, because we didn't get a chance to sort of recap that show. So if you all remember, After Schmoe was represented quite a bit in last week's Schmoes Know Show because they were talking about mine and Jay's coffee discussion. And actually, it's not even mine and Jay's. It was the fact that I brought it up and continued to go on and on about it for several minutes.
Thank you for cleaning that up. Watch out for the bus that I just threw you under.
The real is, and Christian was, he talked about our private conversation, which I mean, I didn't care, but since he did that, I was going to reveal sort of my take in all this. Jay, you know this about me. I've come around lately. I welcome sort of just any sort of attention. Whether it's on the Schmoes Know Show or not, I welcome any feuds. That's why I love negative comments on Sight and Sound's YouTube videos, because I think it just means that we're getting bigger in general. It's sort of the idea of any press is good press, in a way. I have that mentality right now. So there was a version, and Jay, you can definitely speak to this. There was a version of Ryan Snelling, maybe like a year ago, maybe even not even that long ago, where if he heard that Christian called him out for talking about coffee on After Schmoe, there would have been a whirlwind of emotions. Is that correct? Angry, frustration, right? Paranoia?
Yeah, I mean, listen, even before I was a part of After Schmoe, I was the one that was, sort of talking you down off the ledge from some of this stuff. It's like, how do I deal with this Christian Harloff guy? I'm like, I don't even know who that is. Who is that guy? And then you showed me Schnepp and Dennis Zhang, and I was just like, he seems like a nice guy. He's probably just joking around a little bit. I have a problem. I don't know if it's a problem. Sometimes I downplay things. I think it makes you feel better, but sometimes I think it infuriates you. But whatever. That's between you and I.
Yeah, it depends. But the point is here, Christian and Mark were talking about us in this way, and it was the fact that I was a little bit defensive. And not in an angry way. I truly, honestly didn't care. And at this point, I thought it was hilarious that they had this excuse me. I don't know. I think some cinnamon just came up in my throat.
You having a stroke over there? It's that coffee. It's that Starbucks you've been drinking.
There's cinnamon in my coffee, but I can't talk about it. So it's funny how that just came up coincidentally while I'm talking about that. But no, I thought it was hilarious that they were talking about the fact they didn't want us to talk about it. It was even in the title. It was in the show title. Don't talk about coffee. So what happened was Christian sent me a text after hearing my bit at the beginning, and he said, "Did you forget that I listened to the show?" And his philosophy, and we've had private conversations about this before, his philosophy is let that kind of stuff happen freely once you're actually inside the show. That way you don't lose people, which is fine, and I totally get it. And I 100% agree that After Schmoe is a different type of show than anything we do on Sight and Sound. But Jay and I, host both, and we have the same chemistry, and we have the same sort of philosophy when it comes to podcasting. So I think that people, not all people, but a lot of people listen to After Schmoe that also listen to Sight and Sound, so they appreciate that. And that was sort of where I was coming from. But the other side of it was I truly don't think it matters that I talked about coffee. And he can exaggerate that it went on for 6 minutes when it actually went on for like 3 or 4, which I know that that's not a terrific difference. But my point is, I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think it actually matters that much, and I didn't think that it was worth texting me about. But at the same time, and I said this to him too, I also agree with the fact that I didn't need to bring up that coffee story at all. Like, I'm not mad that you didn't like it, like, because you're right. I didn't have to do it at all, even after the theme song. So that's why I just kind of shrugged my shoulders at it. Like, I didn't really see what the big deal was. I just kind of thought it was a thing that happened naturally, and I didn't think anything of it. I wasn't planning a series of talks about coffee for the next 2 months on After Schmoe. But I think, and I'll let you kind of talk about it, but the part that kind of bothered me was that Ellis, and to kind of transition away from the coffee stuff, Ellis, and I know you have a point to make about this too. For one, I don't buy for a second that he listens to us without us knowing. I don't buy that. I'm not saying he hasn't before, but I don't think he listens consistently. There's no way. I didn't really care the fact that he was defensive over Beardo and how we treat him, and I'll let you expand on that. And the other thing what I loved about Ellis's take was that I think we're at a point in our friendship where he knows a little bit about me, and he knows that I love stand-up. He knows that I love Letterman. So he played this angle like it wasn't exactly what he said, but it was like what would Letterman do? What would a stand-up comedian do? And they knew, I think Ellis knew that would get to me, and I would recognize, yeah, you're right. I should never talk about coffee for 4 minutes at the intro of a show. So that was very, very smart of him to know that's where it would get me emotionally. And then the other thing that kind of freaked me out was that they kept calling it a bit that I was doing, and that made me very self-conscious because I don't have the mind of a stand-up comedian, even though I would love to have one. So the fact that they were, I know that there's a part of their brain that was judging me because I didn't deliver this bit well. So if they could just lose the word bit from their vocabulary when I talk about Starbucks, because I don't want them to judge me as a comedian, that would be great. Thanks. That kind of freaked me out a little bit. But anyway, that's sort of my long-winded short take from what happened last week.
Yeah, look, man, I appreciate everything that you just said, especially playing it up how you have, acting like this wasn't really what it was. Listen, guys, all this whole thing was we carefully orchestrated a way, we've talked about it before, that Mark and Christian don't give us notes. And that's fine. We can do whatever we want. We've done this thing for a while where we've tried to figure out what way we can insert something into the show to where they just said, stop the press. We have to address this. We have to give them these notes. And we succeeded. This whole thing was orchestrated. We said, we're going to talk about Starbucks for 6 minutes. We're going to tell this story that is so awful, so off-brand from what After Schmoe should be. Listen, we know what Christian Harloff looks for. So we just said, let's just run literally in the opposite direction of that so that it's such a big deal that they have to name the Schmoes Know live show. Well, not live show, the Schmoes Know show about us and talk about us and a significant amount of time in the show. I think it was a brilliant idea. I think it was a brilliant plan. Listen, no, all jokes aside, that's what you would call a bit. Thank you, and you can catch me every Sunday at the Haha Strip. Anyways, the problem with that opening is that it went longer than it probably should have, and just to be completely open and completely honest, this is what I said on After Party, is that I've always acknowledged that this is your show in the sense that you've been doing this for a long time. You came up with the show along with Paul Wolf and all that stuff. So sort of just giving you your ground to play on, your playground, some would say. And listen, when it was going on, I thought to myself, this is a little long. It's a little long, but I'm willing to play here. Let the boys play, as my mom would tell me. But it did go on a little bit long. I thought we might hear about this from Christian. I was a little bit weary of it, but it's all good. Listen, the way that they addressed it on the show, I think there's many ways that you can sort of take stuff like that. You can get defensive about it. Someone could get defensive about it, but if you're doing the show that we do every single week and you get defensive about that when all we do is poke fun at these people and have fun with them and laugh and make jokes, then that would be super hypocritical of us. When I watched it, I thought it was great fun, great banter between us and them. Obviously, they're not here to have that banter with us, and we're not there to have that banter with them, but sort of across shows, it was really, really nice and really, really fun, so much so that that's sort of what Christian said that he likes about our show. He likes that we can have this cross-show banter, and he wishes that Beardo was he wished that he was on the show last week with them so he could sort of have these rebuttals, or that he at least listened to our shows so that he could have these rebuttals. And I appreciate that. I really, really like that. And that was a good thing too. As much as they were sort of joking about us, they gave us a ton of praise as well, which sort of does transition into the only issue that I really had with the whole conversation. It was, and I get it, Mark was sticking up for Beardo, and rightfully so. I think more or less he was taking the position of he doesn't want fans just to think they can freely, willy-nilly, just like completely take digs at the crew and all of that. And I get that, and I understand that. And we might have been used for or as an example there. But I've said it before. If you listen to the show every week, you know that, I mean, we heap a ton of praise on the entire cast and crew, but we also do have fun with them. We're here to entertain people. We're here to make people laugh. The subject matter that we talk about is Collider and Schmoes Know. So the only thing that we really have to make you laugh, unless we're talking about Starbucks, is Collider and Schmoes Know personnel.
I don't think you finished the point that I thought you were going to make, which was you don't like that the language surrounding After Schmoe. You don't like for it to be about us like just shitting on people. Like you hate that. I think that's what you were expanding on. You don't want the impression to be that we just talk shit when that's far from the truth.
Absolutely, yeah. And thank you for reminding me that it's one thing to just hear that when we're poking fun at people, but that's not all the show is. And I don't want, like you said, the language to be that. All that show does is make fun of people, and that's just not true. Have we had fun with Beardo lately? Absolutely. We've had fun with Beardo, but you can also, and I said this on the after party, you can literally go on my Twitter and see where for one of his episodes that he did, I sent him a personal tweet just saying how great of a job I think he's doing. And it's a give and take sort of relationship, and that's sort of what and I feel like we're part of the Schmoes Know family, and that's sort of what it's about. You poke some fun, you laugh, and you give it and you take it. And that's what we do here.
And that's sort of why my actual only legit criticism that I have towards Makuga is that I feel like that act is played. The fact that this show has been around for almost 2 years, and the fact that he still acts like we're shit talkers, I'm tired of that, and I think that it's played, and I wish that would go away, to your point, but he hasn't done that in a while. So
Can I make a Makuga point real quick?
Yeah.
I brought up that thing about TV Talk not being around, and if you missed it and this and that, Josh Makuga is still bitter about TV Talk. He tweeted out today like a cryptic sort of backhanded thing where it was like, really appreciate everybody tweeting at me saying how much they missed TV Talk now that it's off the air. And it's just like, come on, man. Do you have a Travel Channel show to do? It's like, just relax. Just relax. Go pet Cal.
Not only does he have a Travel Channel show, he has his own talk show on YouTube. Yeah. He could just start another TV show or TV talk show.
Now that it's off the air.
There was one last thing. Oh, and I loved seeing all the people come to our defense in the comment section saying that they loved.
Yeah, but hey guys, how about when you're on Twitter saying actually really enjoy the Starbucks sock? How about you don't chicken out and you actually attach Mark and Christian's name to it? Because that's what I was like. Thanks guys, but would have been nice to tell our bosses that you actually enjoyed that. Not that it matters. They're like, oh, the 5 people? Is that it? The 5 people that like this? How about the rest of them? Do better.
I remember I was talking to Ellis the other day, and he was just kind of asking me generally how things are going, and I was like, yeah, I think Jay and I are going to finish the year maybe around 1,000 YouTube subscribers. And
I thought you were going to say that you responded with a Starbucks story. Well, Starbucks was great today, actually.
No, I was like, yeah, Jay and I are really hoping for 1,000 YouTube subscribers, and I remember just laughing to myself like, he's not impressed by that.
What if his response was like, is that it?
No, it was just sort of like oh. That's cute.
It would have been funny if he was just a complete dick. He's like, man, you guys should be way farther ahead than that. That's probably what you think. That's how your mind works. Like, we should be farther ahead than this. If only we were in LA.
I remembered his line from Honorary Schmoe. You have a podcast? That's adorable. Anyway, that was a long-ass discussion, but hey, it came after the theme song. Let's breeze through some Collider stuff here. Like I said, huge shout out to Schnepp and Robert Meyer Burnett and Amy for the 200th episode of Heroes. I can't wait to watch it. I'm gonna watch it right after this. I feel like comic whatever her name, Comic Book Girl 19 or whatever. She only shows up for the big shows. She's never a regular panelist. Maybe she was at one time, but I just kind of think it's funny that she shows up. Like, she showed up on the 100th, and I don't think she's been there since the 100th. I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but regardless, my point still stands. I just think it's funny that she only shows up for those milestone shows. Speaking of Heroes, Monday Schnepp was joined by Mike Kalinowski. I think that was his second appearance on, aside from the Schmoedown, of course. That was his second appearance. He was also in the Justice League review that they did. Let me just say that Mike Kalinowski oozes authenticity. That guy, and I've said it before, speaking about him in the Schmoedown, he is the most genuine, like, charismatic guy. You can tell he's just really fucking damn nice. And I just really, really appreciate his presence. And he is someone I've really, really taken a liking to, Mike Kalinowski. And I really, really appreciate the fact that Collider is utilizing him more. He doesn't at all solve their diversity issue. So that kind of sucks. But I do like that if anyone was going to be implemented like this, I'm glad that it's Kalinowski. What's your take on him, if you have one?
Well, my take on him is more of just a bigger picture sort of take, that I think it's fascinating. Listen, I'm not going to give 100% of the credit to Christian, but I'm going to give a lot of the credit to Christian. One of the things that he and Mark both have done really, really well over the course of their career, and I'm seeing it now going through the history lesson stuff, is just how many, and we actually saw that on the 300th episode when I'm about to address, how many times they've given platforms for people to just enter into this space and take their knowledge, whether it be of, comic book stuff like Kalinowski has done, or even seeing somebody like Rachel Cushing, who isn't even really a part of this space, show up on the Game of Thrones recaps. I mean, they do that so often, and it's interesting to see something like the Schmoedown be a place where you can bring all these personalities in, and for Christian to also use it as sort of like a scouting thing, where he's like, hey, you know what, that guy would be good on this. It's it's exciting, and I think it's always interesting to see these faces pop up on shows when we don't get to see them all the time.
Yeah, Christian and Mark deserve a lot of credit for giving people platforms. I mean, putting me and Jay on the map, I mean, brilliant move.
Absolutely. We're going to start a Starbucks franchise together.
So anyway, I just wanted to make sure that Kalinowski got a shout out, because usually when I do this, Christian tells the person I talk about, and I tweeted at him earlier this week. I was just, it just put a smile on my face. I wake up, and my first thought when I wake up is, I hope Kalinowski has a good day today. That's the kind of guy he is. So I hope to see him more, and not just on the Schmoe down here. Another point that I want to make about this, and I don't buy into it. I don't believe in this, but the fact remains that there are a group of DC fanboys that do not feel represented on Collider. So having someone like Kalinowski come in and out, I think might help tone that down a little bit. I don't know. Maybe they don't care about that kind of thing, and I don't think that they should care, but I think that it's possible that it could work.
You have people like Jason Inman and Ashley Robinson who, they sort of play both sides of the field pretty well, but they're pretty outspoken DC lovers and fanboys as well. And girls.
Yeah, but since Heroes, when Heroes went daily, we didn't get to see them anymore. They didn't come to the studio just to record for 20 minutes, So I hope that, with the exception of the 200th episode, I hope that those two people are around a lot more too. No, you're right. I mean, they could have. They definitely played that role before it went daily. But yeah, let's. I just want to say something real quick, because I think that people, there might be some people that listen to this podcast that reside in the Movie Talk by Movie Fans Facebook group. So I wanted to address some of those. Some, not all. You guys wear me out. You are exhausting.
How come?
And that's all.
Okay, fair enough.
They've been driving me nuts. I'm doing that fan collective top 50 superhero list for Sight and Sound, and I thought that I could reach out to that group. That way I would have a larger number of fans to consider, and they have been wearing me out. I'm posting polls that only involve 3 movies, and I'll say, what's the best superhero movie out of these 3? And all they want to do is comment about all of the movies that I left out when I purposefully did it. Anyway, they're just wearing me out. They're exhausting, and part of it might be my problem, and part of it's the group's problem in general, because there's so many people, and the posts are just endless, and sometimes things. Anyway, I just had to say that. I had to get that off my chest.
I don't have any problem with you all, so have a fantastic weekend. I hope you guys enjoy whatever it is that you're doing right now while you're listening to this. While we're talking about top 50 superhero lists, I do want to sort of explain an experience that I had. So I had sort of fallen behind on these in this past week, because they were still releasing them over the Thanksgiving holiday, which I think is really cool because we get that content. And Collider in general were doing that. They had some pre-taped stuff. Jedi Council was pre-taped. And I found it fascinating to finally get the opportunity to watch some of these in sequential order. I just had an absolute blast doing it, so much so to where it sort of, not that it fell away in terms of something that I want to watch and content that I want to take in, but it made me anticipate it every day even more so, because watching them in sequential order, they're only 7-8 minute long videos. It just, I don't know, man. It was a lot of fun, and it was exciting. And I think, again, to sort of revisit a conversation that we've already had, maybe to see some of these episodes done in blocks and chunks. Obviously, they're not going to do that because they're so ingrained into the top 50, doing it, one number at a time. However, I am interested to know if they couldn't potentially change up formats, like as we get closer to number 1, like if we couldn't get a top 10 special or something like that, where it's a lot longer of a video. I mean, you wouldn't want to reveal maybe your top 5 outside in another format, but I would like to at least see it done that way because we've already gotten however many we've gotten. I think 30 something at this point. It would be nice to, well, I guess it'd be 20 something. I'm trying to count backwards. It would be nice to just see what that looks like in a little bit more of a sequential order. Also, last thing I'll say about it, this is like random. One day they were just like, hey, let's bring in Ace. Let's bring in that other dude with the beard. I forget his name now. What's his name?
Who is that?
Troy. Is his name Troy? I don't remember his name. But
Joey Rasul. Who the fuck is that?
Isn't that the villain from Ghostbusters 1? Anyways, I just think that it's interesting that they're having these random cast of characters pop up as well. It made me question, like, is Ace a part of Collider? I mean, I guess if he's a part of Schmoes, he's a part of Collider, but I don't know. Just fascinating.
Lately, I just picked up on this past week, and I'm sure Christian will correct me if I'm wrong, but I've sort of picked on, you were talking about the format. I think that they got an idea of who really like, because there was a whole process and they discussed all of these movies, and so what I think they made sure to do, they made sure that they got people that were really passionate about a particular movie to be there at the time. So I think what they ended up doing was just filming, like Ashley Victoria Robinson came in, and I think that they probably just kind of like listed 5 random superhero movies and had that person talk about them. And then mid-interview, they told them, well, now the official ranking is number 33. That's why every panelist has a moment like, 33? What? It's like they've just been told that. So I as far as I know, it just seems like that they're there to talk about said movie first because they either really appreciate it or really hate it. And then they're told the official rating there on the spot. So that's sort of what I picked up on. Maybe somebody picked up on that way earlier than I did. But 2
questions. Over or under 40% that Beardo appears on the top 50 list?
0%.
Who is more likely to appear on the heroes list, Beardo or Max?
Beardo. But when you do over and under, you have to give like a baseline number, right?
I said 40% for the first numder.
I think you did it earlier without a number, though.
No, you did it earlier without a number.
What does Beardo do without we'll talk about it. I'm glad you're enjoying the series here. Finally.
It's been nice, yeah. Finally, I've liked it ever since. Don't make me the bad guy. Fucking movie talk for movie fans group.
Speaking of who's that guy, who is Brad Gilmore? Is that his name?
Oh, you mean Brad Gilmore? The what is he? The manager of Booker T? Very close friends with Christian Harloff and the new host of the Schmoe Rundown.
Really?
That's right.
Really?
That's right.
I'll give him 3 months.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Let's talk about Harpool. That's what I'm calling it. It's Harloff Carpool or Christian Harloff Carpool, whatever. But I'm calling it Harpool because I don't know why. Let's talk about it. We got some interesting shout outs. Some of them really made me laugh this week. He called me out for that Lebitard thing about 3 months too late. But I thought that was pretty hilarious. He also called me out for Star Wars text. And again, Christian loves to exaggerate when he talks about our interactions together. I looked back at my last text towards him about Star Wars, and it was like 2:30 in the afternoon. So I'm not quite sure what he got when he was asleep.
Maybe that's his 10:30 at night because his sleep schedule is so fucked up.
That's true. But I think he's actually just getting ready for movie talking about that point. But I don't know.
I think all it was you texted him in the middle of a dope-ass Battlefront mission. That's what happened.
No, he had beat Battlefront. I made sure of it. That way I knew I wasn't interrupting anything.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Yeah, the Carpool show, I love it. I really enjoy it because, listen, here's how I take in this content. I'm working at my day job, and around 10:45 to 11 o'clock in the morning every day, because we're on the East Coast, I get this notification on my phone, and I set up my phone where it's right in front of me to where I can just listen to it and look down at it while I'm working. And I open up Facebook and there it is. So sometimes it'll run into my lunch break where I'll have to stop it towards the end, usually while he's by Ricky's Pizza or whatever that place is. It's weird. I feel like I know his.
Isn't it Dino's?
His route. No, I don't know.
Dino's
Someplace.
Pizza.
So I'm watching and I'm getting excited, and he did it every day for almost 2 weeks, and then he just decided he was only going to do it one day this week, and it kind of bummed me out. I'm not going to lie to you. And I thought to myself, here we go. We got the new Beardo here. He's just not going to do his show.
I think it's funny that you and I are just automatically are in there together. Like, there's no like, hey, we need to watch Harpool so that we can talk about it on an After Schmoe. I just wake up, I open it up, I go to Harpool, and you're there, and you and I have some funny conversations within the chat.
Okay, I have two things real quick though.
Okay.
One, I don't know if I actually want him to address some of the questions that I ask. Sometimes I'm doing it just to be funny. Like when you kind of have to pay attention. I don't know. I'm kind of picking up on different quirks he's doing while he's driving.
You have to pick up on when he's actually driving. Like, if you don't want him to acknowledge something you've said, don't do it when he's at a stoplight.
Yeah, so I just randomly made that statement about watching. One night I just turned on 2 episodes of Clone Wars, and then of course he was like, "Well, make sure you Google how to properly watch Clone Wars." I was like, "Okay, come on." just turned it on. I was just watching Netflix one night before bed. And the other thing I need to say, Chris Woodburn, I love you to death. One of our most dedicated listeners wanted to ask Christian a question in the chat, and I noticed this a few times, and he kept posting, "Christian, let me ask you a question. Christian, let me ask you a question. Christian, let me ask you a question." He's not going to read it and say, "Oh, okay, Chris Woodburn, go ahead," and then maybe he starts driving and you answer him. Just ask him the question.
Yeah.
Just ask him the question.
Nobody else is doing that. Nobody else is prompting to ask a question.
Yeah.
Just be cool. Just be cool.
Just some tips. Yeah, just some tips. If you want to ask him a question, just ask him a question. Maybe he'll respond to you by telling you to Google how to watch Clone Wars.
I think what was hilarious is when Christian was doing that thing, talking about how I was texting him about Star Wars. There was a guy in the chat that was defending Christian against me, like, "Yeah, Snelling, how dare you text him like that? Why don't you?" I don't know what he said, but I was like, "Dude, it's fine. It's not a big deal." And he just kept going, like, "No, Christian doesn't need that from you."
Listen, okay, first of all, timeout, guy. All right, we do the show every week. Not every week. We missed last week, but we do this all the time. We don't get paid for it, but we still love doing it anyways. We love entertaining everyone. There's not a lot of perks that come with it, but one of the perks, by God, if I wanna test my Star Wars theory with Christian fucking Harloff, I'll send it to him. He might not respond, or he might make fun of me, or he might just respond with a "yeah." But that's one of the perks, okay? We're not just some guys that are like, "Do you think Rey is Snoke?" No, come on. Be cool.
That's all I got. That's all I got for the extracurriculars. I'm ready to talk about. Actually, no, we need to get to the history lesson first. You have a history lesson, right?
That's right. I do have a history lesson just to set this one up. It's a little bit short and sweet. Listen, we all love JT, and formerly known as JTI. And this comes from November of 2013, and people may or may not know the little quirks and nuances of JTE. Of course, one of his most infamous lines is the Trisana tortoise tops answer that he gave. Some people might think that that's played up for effect, or that's just a character he portrays. That's not the case. This goes all the way back to 2013, where he was having trouble pronouncing names like the name Dolph Lundgren and the name Jean Lajoie, who plays Taco on The League. and we're going to hear Mark and Christian's response to him pronouncing things, maybe for the first time. I don't know, but let's take a listen.
Okay.
All right. So finally, now the final story that we're going to talk about tonight.
You get the name right.
What's
Because
that?
yesterday Christian's like, "Hey, you hear about this Darkling thing?"
Wait, you want to talk about
God.
names? Come
Yeah.
here for a second before I get into this story. Come here.
Who JTI?
I want to talk about JTI.
What's up, Cobster?
We were talking
The
about
other intern showed up.
Yeah, we were talking about Thor. We were talking about
Yeah.
Listen. We were talking about Thor, and then we mentioned there's some like a He-Man movie or something too.
boy.
Ken made a He-Man joke, and so then JTI made a comment about He-Man. And what did you say?
Says the one starring Dolph Lundgren.
Dolph who?
Dolph Lundgren.
Dolph who?
Lundgren?
Dolph Lundgren? Is that right?
Get out of here! This guy is the worst with names. It's so funny. With
I feel like
Dolph Lundgren.
if you just mumbled it, though, you might think that he said it
But
right.
I made him say it 4 times.
Dolph Lundgren.
Lundgren, and he called John. We had
There's
John.
a G in there.
Wait.
There's a
and
G.
use Ken's mic also. What? John LaJoie was on this. Was on this show. What did you call John LaJoie?
John Leo?
That's close.
Oh.
John Leo. I love his pronunciations. They're the best.
Man, you know I loved his machete and that Danny Trejo. That guy's really
Johnny
good.
Trejo is good. Mark Elias.
Wait, hold on. You got to have him do Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Well, you just said it. You just said it.
No, it's like you did.
You just
had
said
to
it.
be
Now
like,
he's
can
gonna
you?
get it.
GO4, yeah.
Oh, so good. Dolph Lundgren will never be on this show.
Oh, stop.
Can we get a Kickstarter going for a Rosetta Stone for JTI over there?
All right.
There's not a whole lot of discussion that we can center around that, other than I was laughing my ass off. Classic JTE. It's funny how some things never change, and that's something that has never gotten old. Poking fun at JTE, and I just think that speaks to how well he puts up with it. We sort of started the show talking about taking things lightly, taking things jokingly, and he does it better than anybody. The other thing I want to do real quick before we move on is apologize for my tone throughout the show. I think it sounds like I'm angry and moody when I'm definitely not. So have I been a little Tony, Jay? Have I been Tony?
I don't think so. I mean, we took a week off. I think we have a reason to be frustrated because, listen, one thing by skipping last week that we gave up was our numbers syncing up, and I think that is just a terrible, terrible thing. You know what I'm saying? Like if they were on 302, we would have been on 22 or whatever.
It was Thanksgiving and my birthday.
Yeah, it's just a thing. It's just a thing. Hey, real quick before we get into the Schmoes Show, I have this little game that I want to play from now on, where I give you a quote from SK Plus, and I want you to tell me who said it and what show it was on and who said it.
I'm down for this as long as we can use the name Tony for each other anytime either one of us comes across as Moody or Tony.
Okay, you're being a little Tony right now. All right, so this game is called Who Said It on SK Plus. This week's quote: I recently just got into mild salsa.
Okay.
Who said it? Well, what show is it from and who said it? What, do you want to hear it again? I recently just got into mild salsa.
I'm going to say that this person is, well, I could see them being non-Hispanic because it's such a white thing to say, but there also could be some shock value. Like maybe the whole point of it was this was a Hispanic and they're just now getting into mild salsa.
I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it as an impression of them. Are you ready?
Yeah.
I just got into mild salsa.
Okay.
I don't know if that helps you or not.
No, but I think you tried.
that could be an indication.
I think you tried to make your voice go up higher than usual, and so I'm leaning towards Cody on the Wanger show, but I'm trying to run through all of my shows. It wouldn't be. You didn't do Roca. You didn't do Nost. Maybe Bibiani. Okay. I'm gonna go with Cody on the Wanger show.
You are correct with your show. You are incorrect with who it was because Cody was not on the show.
Damn. Who was it? Or do I have to keep guessing?
You can if you want to. You're narrowing it down to 2 people.
It's something absolutely dumb, so it's probably Beardo.
It was Copster. Copster said, I just started getting into mild salsa.
That's amazing. Oh my god. That's the new. I don't know if anybody's ever owned a plant before.
Why do you think I found it so hilarious to start a new segment?
It's amazing. Speaking of Beardo, I have an exclusive right here. I haven't even told Jay this. Nobody knows. This is the world exclusive for this announcement. I recorded an episode of Don't Be a Beardo. Jay.
Oh, yeah? You like that?
So, what we're going to do is we're going to build up to it. It's going to be an event, and I will slowly release teases of my episode of Don't Be a Beardo on this podcast, and the first one is coming next week. So you guys are definitely going to want to stay tuned. Next week, you will hear a teaser for my episode of Don't Be a Beardo. Keep your ear to the ground, as Jay would say. It's coming next week, and it was fun. Okay, let's talk about Schmoes Know Show number 311. Before we do your notes, I want to talk about the number 7 real quick, because Christian Harloff.
It's the number of the Lord. 777.
Christian Harloff posted a cryptic picture, and I don't think he still knows how to crop images, but he posted the number 7 on Instagram and Facebook. A lot of people were speculating, because it's the same background, it's the same font, as to when he posted the number 4, and that was sort of a reference and a nod to the upcoming 4 Horsemen team in the Schmoedown. So a lot of people were wondering, is this a new team? Is this going to be a Magnificent 7 situation in the Schmoedown? We're getting into the point where we're teasing a lot of things for the Spectacular. That's not at all where my mind went when he posted this. And this is me speculating. I think he's talking about Phase 7 of the Schmoes Know Show, and I think he pretty much verified it even last night when on the Harpool he said that there was going to be an announcement, and then they retracted that and briefly mentioned that posting of the number 7. And they wouldn't announce a Schmoedown team right then and there. So I think what they were going to do is announce the fact that they are possibly moving studios, and that 7 meant Phase 7 for the Schmoes Know Show. And for one, I want to ask you if you agree with my point. And my second point is that, is it really actually a Phase 7? Is it actually a new phase just because they moved studios? Because it's still under the Collider umbrella. So does it actually count as a new phase? Because every other time, yes, it's been about a venue change, but there was other things around it. It was the fact that they went to AfterBuzz, they were at Toad Hop. It was sort of like a different umbrella and a different I don't know, maybe they have a different format in mind, and maybe it will be completely different. But right here, right now, what's your take on all this?
Yeah, I'm pretty much on the same page. I think it's definitely a Phase 7, and I do think it definitely marks a move. I'm not necessarily saying yet that that's what I expect with a changing of phase. But, I mean, if you watch his Carpool stuff and you sort of pay attention to what people have said or are saying in the space, anytime they talk about moving locations, if you piece enough stuff together, that's legitimately what's happening. That's legitimately what they're doing right now. On the Carpool, he even sort of gave the shout out of moving to Beverly Hills versus staying in Burbank potentially, or moving to Hollywood, whatever it may be. He even addressed that saying, oh, we're not moving to Beverly Hills, which I knew that because, again, if you piece enough stuff together, it's been addressed that Beverly Hills, they've talked many times about how it would be better to be in Beverly Hills because of this person. They wouldn't have to drive as far. JT wouldn't have to drive as far, this and that. But then they sort of went back on that. But in terms of what indicates a new phase? For me, I do think changing locations has a lot to do with it because that's just what's happened, as you've already said. But I'm not going to say that it's a format change as much as I would just say that it's just like a refresh of something that we already know. If you go back to the Toad Hop days, it's more of like a radio show sort of vibe, whereas AfterBuzz was more in line of what we know right now of the live show. You know, couches on the other side of the room, a lot of camera changing and this and that. Whereas this phase that we're in right now has had it's had this weird evolution over time. You know, the pictures on the wall and the Schmoes Know set, the Wangers table moving from the movie talk side of things just to being this dark corner in the background, the addition of the couch, the addition of headphones, all of that stuff sort of is the evolution of this phase. So I think it's definitely a phase 7, but I do think it's more than just a move, and I do think it's more than just, I don't think it's a format change. I think it's just a refresh on what we already know of Schmoes Know.
Well, it might be a format change because I think Christian and Mark, 2 weeks in a row, they've done the sight and sound way of things.
Right.
And I don't know. I'm ready to talk about it. I can't wait to hear how upset Mark and Christian get when we label what they're doing as the sight and sound wave. Let's get into Jaye Williams' stream of consciousness notes for the Schmoes Know Show, number 311.
These are your Schmoes Know stream of consciousness notes brought to you by SightSoundPod.com. Ryan Snelling, let's hear your stream of consciousness notes for this week.
Was Christian asleep or? And those are your Schmoes Know Show stream of consciousness. I can't even say it.
It's hard to do. It is difficult to do. I didn't take notes this week. I didn't take notes. And here's why. One, this was the thing that we talk about all the time. This was like, they barely got off track this week. You know, last week they got off track with the coffee story and this and that, and I could have taken notes about that all day. But with this one, they were really on point, just talking about movie stuff, talking about themselves and this and that. And there just wasn't a lot for me to just sort of pick out and, like, you know, make fun of and this and that. But the other reason I didn't take notes is because with the excitement of this announcement, I just couldn't wait. It wasn't up on the podcast feed yet, so I put it on my car mount, and I had YouTube going while I was driving around downtown Lexington. And so I couldn't take the notes and watch the YouTube show while I was driving. I could only do one, so I decided to make it home safely. And it wasn't the type of show where I could really go back and listen to it again to sort of pick out little things. I mean, I'm sure I probably could have, but it was just so discussion-based. And I liked it, and I really enjoyed it, but it didn't really make well for stream of consciousness notes.
I don't really have a ton of notes, but I think there's a lot of... We could definitely have plenty of discussion on this episode, even though it's not really about... Let's just talk about it. So,
wait, real quick. Let's just address the format, because this is the second week in a row. Christian kind of talked about it on his carpool. That this was a decision that they weren't even. They kind of made it on the fly while he was driving to work. He was talking about, I think it's just going to be Ellis and I again. It probably won't be live, and Cobster might be there. He might not be there. Let's just talk about the fact that they've done this 2 weeks in a row and that they're sort of taking this approach right now.
Yeah, I really dig it. It's one of those things where it's conflicting because you and I can have a conversation here about how much we enjoy this type of format, but it's at the cost of losing the other format, right? And that's not a conversation. I mean, that's not even something that we can really discuss, because there's no way that anyone ever thinks that they should do this over what they normally do. I think the only thing that's missing from what they regularly do is Christian. So that's all we need. So, but if we don't get Christian on the live show, I don't mind spending a week or two on this type of format. I really enjoy it. I think that I like the idea that they know that it can only be sustained for about an hour, because I don't think that there's any way it works if they do the full 2 by themselves. And that's part of the point, is that they just kind of pre-record something and put it up. That way we don't go a week without the live show. They give us at least something. So I think that's really smart. But I am someone who, for a long time, has been advocating more of a Christian and Mark. I want to see more Christian and Mark on either Schmoes Know or Collider. And this kind of conversation sprouted the first time Christian left, while his wife, I don't remember the timeline exactly, but, everyone knows that Christian went on hiatus the first time. And so there was a lot of discussion about how they needed to, and it was, part of it had to do with the fact that there weren't a whole lot of reviews of them together too. And so we were talking a lot about how I wish that they could find something that they could at least do together, if it meant like Christian and Mark getting coffee, or like just doing exactly this, just talking about movies. And so for that reason, I do really like what they're doing here. And so I don't mind it if it's a temporary thing, a temporary replacement for the traditional Schmoes Know live show as we know it.
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's brought up a lot of different thoughts in my mind, especially with this whole idea of a new phase coming about. Here's the thing that I like and I think is exciting and fun, is that what if Phase 7 there was no standard format every single week. We've gotten so used to this large cast of characters, multiple tables, couches, camera changes, this and that, guests coming in. We talk about the curse of the fourth chair, all that stuff are things that we have known that is what the Schmoes Know live show is. However, I like that. I really, really enjoy that. That's what we've come to expect and what we love. And we were longing for this 2-person, static camera, one on each person, that conversation. That was fantastic. This week I did kind of miss everybody else. I was like, I kind of miss everybody else, but it just brought this idea to my mind of what if they just kind of did different shit every single week? Like what if they did the big crew maybe once a month or something like that, or twice a month or whatever, or they just did a Mark and Christian episode once a month. Or I'll tell you specifically when I would want to see this. I would love to see interviews done more of just Mark, Christian, and a guest, as opposed to them being a part of, because not that I don't like it. I think it's fine anytime they have a guest, but you never really know what you're going to get in terms of the dynamic. And I think that would be very interesting. Maybe it's a show that's more hodgepodge put together with segments throughout the entire week. Like what if the first half of the show was the entire crew like we came to know, and the second half of the show was some sort of pre-recorded conversation with Mark and Christian? I don't know. I'm just throwing out ideas here. But it's just brought this whole idea to light of what if the future of Schmoes Know isn't this standard thing that we come to expect. Then people are maybe more interested in what happens every single week. Maybe you don't get Ken falling asleep in the middle of the show like he does from time to time. It's just fascinating.
I agree with you. I think that the part of the Schmoes Know show that can easily become my least favorite is when they halt and everything and have guests. Now, I'm not saying that Schmoes Know and Collider shouldn't have guests at all. I like your idea of making it just like a separate video each time, because depending on who it is, it can totally change the feel of the show. If you had a separate video that was just for that, it could be, I don't know. You wouldn't have to worry about, there's a couple of things you wouldn't have to worry about. You wouldn't have to worry about ending it so quickly because you have more show to do. So maybe you allow yourself to have more of a conversation with your guest. But also just kind of highlighting their own video might help them even more so. Because I'm curious. I wonder how many times people just kind of walk away from the TV if that kind of thing happens, and maybe not just with the guests. Maybe there are plenty of segments throughout the show that people just walk away from. God forbid anyone leave during Bread to the Future. But
absolutely,
I like that idea. I think that's the part. Like if you were to ask me, hey, what's that thing the Schmoes Know does that you don't really ever care for? Actually, no, that's not fair. It just depends. It just depends.
I will say this about the guest segments that I find interesting. Going through these history lessons, I remember the 2 times that Sean Astin was on the show. He wasn't on the show for the entirety of the show, but he was on the show for most of the show. And there was something special about Mark and Christian and maybe a Tiffany Smith there with that host doing the entire show. It's not just a sort of a, and again, I'm not being negative towards it. It's not like a forced segment where they're like, okay, this guy's here. Let's just, like you said, halt proceedings and do this thing. It just was the Schmoes Know Show with Sean Astin. And I think that's very fascinating. And it's something they can kind of play with too, right? They can do a Mark and Christian. They can add a third person or whatever the case may be. Just something to sort of make it fresh. Not that it's been stale, not that it's been anything like that. It's just adding that freshness factor. I'm going to coin that term. Please nobody steal it from me. The freshness factor to the Schmoes Know live show.
I think one of my favorite guests is like Andrew Santino. Somebody like that. I
right?
like it.
I was about to say him. I was literally about to bring him up.
I think like a stand-up comedian is always a really great guest to have for a minute, I think. Which is funny because I'm deciding for the comedian and not, say, a filmmaker, an indie filmmaker. But someone like that who like maybe has an idea of what the show is, but also has enough identity and presence that they can go have a back and forth, if you will, and not just like a generic Q&A about what it was like to make said movie. You know what I mean? I think someone like
Michael Rappaport, something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know. I just think that works out better. And I don't even know. I don't remember how we got here exactly. I know.
Well, just the shifting of the format and the personnel.
Yeah.
I think it's good for the guests too, especially if they are a stand-up comedian and they know Mark per se or Christian, and they know Christian has a background in that. It makes it interesting and maybe a little bit more comfortable for them to have those conversations. And look, you can talk about movies with. It's always hilarious to hear that outside perspective when they're glowing about Star Wars and somebody's like, you know what, I kind of fucking hate Star Wars. Like it's just like it adds a new and interesting and fresh conversation to it. And then you could obviously you could do more with Schmoedown stuff as well.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating to know that the Schmoes Know show, the Schmoes Know live show, could be what we've always known it to be, but it could also just turn into the Mark and Christian show if it wants to be as well.
Another thing that I wanted to bring up, and I noticed this a couple of weeks ago, and part of me hates to bring it up because I don't know how much it's actually due to the fact that they're doing this non-traditional format, if you will, but the past few live shows have had disappointing view counts. Have you noticed that?
I haven't. I don't really pay attention to that stuff. Just because I just don't. I don't think to go back on that, but that is interesting. Again, I will say it's that time of the year.
Oh, well, not really. I mean, just the Justice League preview only had 42,000, and usually, before that, the Wahlberg versus Farrell, that only had 33,000, and both of those shows were traditional 2 hours. And
I'm not trying to take a dig here, but the Wahlberg Will Ferrell one, that sort of topic is like let's scrounge together some sort of title. Again, not throwing shade. And then the Justice League one, to be fair, even the Justice League showing for the box office and whatnot wasn't very impressive. So maybe that was a reflection on that. Maybe it was a precursor to that.
No, I don't think
Come
so.
at me, DC boys.
Most of their shows are near the 100K ballpark. And I think that the people that know Mark and Christian know that no matter what the show is, no matter what lame title it is, or no matter what thumbnail you think it might not interest you as a fan, you know that you're actually going in to watch 2 hours of Schmoes, and you're also aware that whatever the headline is only going to be maybe 10 to 30 minutes of the full 2 hours. I think their listeners know that. I don't know. Maybe I'm underestimating. Maybe there are a lot more people that just stumble upon the Schmoes Know Show than I think. I don't believe that to be the case. I think that I don't think it's that. I don't think it's like that. I think it's just, I find it very, very odd that the past few shows, and I'll even take the last 2 out of the equation, just because they've been different, and because the non-traditional live show doesn't get as many plays in general. So I don't know. I just noticed it.
I do think it's an interesting concept to think, and Christian had talked about this too, and obviously we're aware of it because we play in both worlds, but I am interested to know of if there's anyone out there that maybe could have shifted their the way they take in the content from video to podcast, especially. And I'm not like throwing a ton of credit here, but if SK Plus is like this new thing and it's growing and they're getting these big shows and they're saying to themselves, well, hell, I can just listen to Schmoes Know here as well if I'm already here for top 10 or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
It's up the next morning. Maybe they're just saying, oh, I'll just listen to Schmoes Know live show here as well. Do you see a problem with that? And maybe could that cut into their business model if they are maybe cannibalizing the YouTube views and numbers with podcast stuff as well?
Honestly, I would think that the additional podcast to SK Plus would hurt the podcast feed more so. So
Really?
yeah, I mean, I think all around the numbers for SK Plus have gone down. Like there so many times.
Well, you're speaking to SK Plus, the YouTube channel,
Both. I'm talking
and the podcast network.
I'm talking about both. You said your question was, does the live show on YouTube conflict with the live show in the podcast feed, right?
Right. I'm saying, does its appearance as a podcast as well? Because people are saying to themselves, I like all these other shows. Why don't I just go ahead and listen to the live show as a podcast as opposed to watching it in video form?
Right. And I'm saying I would be more concerned about the opposite. I would think that the fact that they are stacking the deck in the podcast feed would hurt the Schmoes Know live show's podcast numbers more so than the YouTube numbers. Because the SK Plus YouTube channel, that's the only stat. Those are the only stats that I can see on SK Plus. But the more shows that they add, the numbers tend to go down per view. And not even, I mean, we joke about After Schmoe, but I think across the board, Top 10 gets less plays, Wanger Show gets less plays, Schmoedown Rundown gets less plays. So
yeah, and I think, I mean, my theory with that is just simply based on the fact of, hey, we've stumbled upon this on the YouTube channel. If most of these are static images, why don't I just listen to it? And obviously we're not privy to those numbers on a week-to-week basis.
right.
So I'll just listen. I mean, and I mean, we've seen that firsthand, so to speak. I mean, we don't get huge numbers on SK Plus for Sight and Sound, but it's like, oh, you've got all this other content over here. I'll just say screw this YouTube video and go listen to all your podcasts.
Well, the fact that we're having this conversation will 100% prompt Christian to correct us, so he will probably let us know.
Well, I would love to know I mean, not that it really matters, and it could be a private thing. I would just be curious just to know, hey, when this week when you had lower numbers than normal on the Schmoes Know live show, did you see a bump in the podcast feed?
Right. A couple other things I wanted to talk about. For one, I wanted to say this last week, but we didn't have a show. Ellis doesn't get enough credit. And I think that even After Schmoe is a little bit guilty of this because After Schmoe has more of a relationship with Christian than it does Ellis. And I think it's easier for me, like if you and I are joking about a Schmoe, it's more so it's a lot more often than not Christian that we're referencing and talking about, and Ellis doesn't get enough credit on this show and in general because he is the one that he works a lot. Like, we make jokes about how he just goes into the office and does movie talk and then goes home to take a nap, but he's the one. He does movie talk 4 days a week. He hosts Movie Talk 4 days a week. In addition to his stand-up career, in addition to sort of captaining, is that a verb? Captaining the ship on the Schmoes Know live show more often than not lately. And, part of it is my fault. But Ellis just doesn't get enough credit. And I wanted to make sure that we brought that up. I'm not saying Christian doesn't have things to do. I know he does. I know he's busy, but I think that all of us could probably appreciate Ellis more, and even us on this show. So there's that.
I agree. Just to add on to that, I agree 100%. You and I, we appear on a lot of creative content, just on our own stuff and other formats as well. But I think Mark, it's easy because you see him all the time. It's just like, oh, there's Mark again. And I think it's easy to sort of forget that he's working his ass off. The other thing I think that it's down to as well is the fact that on just a technical ability level, Mark is such a fantastic host that most of the time, like, you could disagree with this and that's fine, but I think sometimes, at least lately, I've noticed that his personality comes through more on movie talk as opposed to some of the more recent Schmoes Know live shows, because he has such a big cast of characters there. He's constantly passing the ball around and working, thinking about his next amazing transition or his just little comedic quip that he's going to add there, that we're not actually spending a lot of time with his I would be curious to know, does he feel a lot of pressure to talk as little as possible on the live show so that he can, like I said, set something up, pass the ball to somebody?
He does.
You're just going to speak for him? Yeah.
No, I know that he does. He believes that when he is hosting a show, he believes that he is the point guard. So his number one priority is to, like you said, pitch the ball. Those are actually his words. So, by default, when you're hosting the Schmoes Know live show and you have that many more mouths to feed, he has to worry about that.
He's the John Stockton of the Schmoes Know live show.
Yes, very good. I also liked Ellis's take. I liked his take to go see the disaster artist before seeing The Room. When, someone like Christian or anybody, the traditional way they would say is to see The Room and then the disaster artist. But I'm someone who kind of likes to take advantage of seeing something out of context. Like, so many people love when a movie comes out and it's based on a book. They love reading the book first, and I'm like, no, I'd like to appreciate the movie for what it is, and maybe read the book afterwards. Like, why not switch it up? Why not have a different opinion? Why not have your opinion be informed in some other way than what most other people are? So I really liked. I wish that he stuck with it. I know that the commentary is going to be some great content for Collider, so maybe there's a better example out there. But I did like that type of thinking. So it's kind of unfortunate he didn't get to stick with that, though.
Yeah, the other thing that I really enjoyed about this episode, which I think might have been impromptu, but it worked really, really well, how they went through the entire year of stuff to sort of almost grade the weight of each season. I thought that was a fantastic conversation. It's something that I literally was taking mental notes when we do our pop culture crown at the end of the year, because that conversation might have shifted some things for me. And I think it's important for people to have, because, I love that discussion in this space is, maybe this year wasn't the greatest for movies. Like, it's an interesting debate that they sort of had. I also love the debate that they had where Mark was sort of questioning Christian's take on certain movies because he didn't get to see them in the theater first, and he got to watch them at home on a screener, on a smaller screen. I thought that was fascinating, because I think sometimes we forget as people in this space that 99.9% of people on the face of this planet will not have a chance to actually witness. I'm sorry, not even on this planet, that will ever exist, period, will not have the opportunity to see most movies on a big screen. And I think that's an important fact. Does that make sense when I say that? It's just like a movie in a theater is only there for a limited amount of time. And I just think it's a fascinating discussion that they had where it's just like, I don't know if that really bears any weight on your enjoyment of it.
No, I definitely appreciated that, because even off air, we've talked a lot about how I feel as a movie fan that the indie films, the films that we're supposed to be watching to prepare for Oscar season, it's one of my favorite. It's my favorite time of the year as a movie fan, and I've never felt more disconnected than right now, because it's so weird to me that we're just now having this kind of conversation at the beginning of December. I usually feel like it starts in October, September, because that's like, I think even Arrival came out in October or something like that last year.
Later towards last year.
Yeah, and so, and I know there's a couple of exceptions like Wind River and The Big Sick, but like fall is my favorite time to be a movie fan, and more than ever, and I don't know why. I still follow the same people on Twitter that help me out with this kind of stuff. People like Scott Mantz and Hollywood Reporter, people that follow the festivals. I have never felt more disconnected from the indie movies than I do this year. And so I really, really appreciated the fact that I was sort of able to catch up and retain some of these movie titles that are being thrown out. Even things that I hadn't, like Wonder Wheel. That was like the first time I'd ever heard that. And maybe in passing I heard of Woody Allen's next movie, but I didn't know what the title of it was. So, and I didn't even know when The Disaster Artist was coming out until this week. And it's coming out this week. So maybe that's my personal problem. Maybe everyone else has sort of been up to date. I really would have called, if they didn't have this conversation, I really would have called for maybe a guest appearance from Ace to give us like an Ace Indie Picks segment of the show. But yeah, it's weird for me right now as a movie fan. And again, you brought up the point off air, how it's sort of just been the big three that they've been talking about: Marvel, DC, and Star Wars.
Right. Well, it's fascinating too, because I think this particular time of the year for movies is when we look to people like Mark and Christian and other reviewers in this community, because it's easy as when I almost said casual fans, but people who aren't in the business like this, it's easy to sort of keep the pulse on the big blockbusters because, one, they're always being talked about, they get the wide releases and this and that, but I can sort of relate to it as a music fan. Like when I put out my end of the year list, there's going to be a ton of stuff that people have just never even heard of and has never existed. And that's not me like being a pretentious asshole. It's just, it's hard to keep track of things that you don't know about. So we look to people like these reviewers, people whose actual jobs it is to keep track of all this stuff, to say, what did I miss? What do I need to be paying attention to? And a lot of these indie releases are ones that can fall under the radar. The other thing I want to tag on to this too, you know how we love to point out when Mark and Christian clearly take what we say on this show and they use it in their day jobs.
Yes.
I've found it particularly interesting here recently on Movie Talk specifically how Christian has been using that idea of the casual fan's perspective as opposed to being inside the bubble. He's been using that conversation on Movie Talk a lot. I talked about how sometimes I feel like we need more talking on Movie Talk, and I really did feel that way this week watching the show. And I know we're out of the Collider stuff, but I will never hesitate to point out where they have taken something that we've suggested and putting it into action.
That's where they should have referenced us. That's how
Absolutely.
they can bring up After Schmoe.
Look, guys, I appreciate that you listen, but just acknowledge us and throw us a bone every time you take one of our ideas and use it.
Like the whole idea of this format of the Schmoes Know Show. It's so clearly sight and sound.
Absolutely. Yeah, even Beardo took it.
The last thing I want to talk about, I don't have a tremendous take on this, but I just wanted to bring this up and then we can wrap. I like the fact that they are continuing to really, really challenge their fans and the movie space, because I've been tired. I think you've been tired. Everyone's been tired of movie fandom's behavior, movie Twitter's behavior. And it's just gotten annoying. And it's funny because since I've been hosting this show, Christian Harloff rants, particularly about trolls, have been some of the best moments of the show, and they've been hilarious. But right now, it's not funny. Like, I'm really annoyed, and I'm not saying I'm the best movie fan or maybe the best representative, but we've talked about it before. I know when to just not talk if I disagree with something, because it just doesn't matter. And I was kind of jokingly bringing up my interactions with some of the people in the Movie Talk Facebook group, but I just had a dose of it, and it was annoying to me, and I was snapping back at people. I can't imagine what it's like to be on their level and deal with this. And part of me was thinking about, like, is someone like Christian bringing it upon himself? Because the more outlets that you have, the more platforms that you have, maybe the more you are bogged down with this stuff. So maybe the addition of Harpool, and maybe that's an exception. Maybe the most diehard Harloff fans go to the Harpool show, and they aren't going to act that way. But I was just thinking about it. Do they continue to open up these doors because they have so many? And I'm not saying it's their fault, but I like the fact that Christian is talking about just literally going into channels and Facebook groups and just shutting people down for being dongs, as we would call them. And I saw even a tweet from Dan Murrell today. Dan Murrell tweeted about the two main points that are going to kill film criticism, and he was talking about the fact that fans can't just settle for something that's in the middle. And we talked a lot about that too. Either this movie is the best movie ever or the worst movie ever. There's no middle ground. And I like how these people are sort of setting a precedent, setting a standard, and really challenging their fans, because I'm just tired of it. So I know that they have to be tired of it. But I assume that you've noticed this sort of policing even more than ever right now.
Yeah, my main take on this is that I know Christian listens to the show. Allegedly, Mark listens as well. All I will say is don't let up on this. Don't get self-conscious like, maybe we're talking too much about it, because I think it's something that definitely needs to happen. But also, just me personally, I can relate to it on a much smaller scale, of course, because one of the things that we've done in the entire year of us working together very seriously on a podcast and a YouTube channel and all of that is we have made it such an important point to shape how our listener base interacts with one another. Like our entire Facebook group, yes, we do have a Facebook group. There's a link in the description box below. You can go in that group and everyone polices each other, and everyone has a certain standard that they interact with each other. We embrace not only actual discussion, we also embrace respecting somebody's opinion. Like, you might heavily disagree with somebody, and that's completely fine as long as you can have that conversation with them and back it up and support it. And I think that totally needs to be reinforced. The other reason I would say keep it up and don't get self-conscious as to what your listenership might think of it is because they're living it and they're experiencing it. You know, a movie fan might get in the comments and have a discussion and then have to deal with these people, and it's directly affecting their experience. So don't let up off of it. Don't listen to people that say, oh, who cares? Let it go, this and that. Those are just those people, those trolls that you're speaking about. So I enjoy it. You get a lot of good content from being frustrated about from that. And obviously, after a while, I'm sure it's never going to go away. And after a while, I'm sure it can get a little bit old, but stick with it for now. I appreciate it, at least.
Well, I think you kind of said it yourself, and I don't know if you realized it, but the fact that you were talking about how we formed our community, it 100% stems from their example. So
Absolutely.
On some level, it works. If they're having this discourse with the fan community, and you know, some of those fans create their own content, start their own communities like we have, it stems from them. So they are the example, whether they realize it or not. So, I mean, I'm serious. I agree with what you said 100%. They should not back down from this.
Could you imagine if you know, they approached us and said, hey, we want you to do this thing called After Schmoe, and one of the cool aspects about it is you're going to be exposed to our fan base and maybe they'll follow you over. Could you imagine if it was just the shittiest fan base ever, and it's like, I don't know if I want to be friends with those people. I don't know if I want them. And it's just like that speaks to Schmoeville.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. There's you know, we had a whole couple of weeks where we were dealing with the TV talk reaction, and that's completely different. Like, people were just reacting.
People were
emotionally.
hurt. They were hurt instead of just you know what I mean?
But we
different.
weren't speaking. Yeah, we weren't speaking about like in the same way we're talking about trolls and negativity and this and that. It's just completely different. Yeah. And that was more of an open conversation about it.
Yeah. If people are wondering, why do you keep talking about the fans? Well, After Schmoe is, even though it's, a recap and a discussion of everything that they do, it's also about being a fan of this. And we, from day one, have always felt like we needed to represent the fandom in some way as well. So that's why we talk about what it's like to be a fan of this content. And we will continue to have discussions like that, especially when neither of us have notes on the Schmoes Know live show.
It's also just part of the After Schmoe experience. I mean, we've never really talked about that before, but if you just tune into the show to get your dose of Collider recap or your Schmoes Know recap, like the full experience is not only listening to it, but obviously taking part in Schmoeville, taking part in the Sight and Sound Facebook group, and listening to us and all of those other form factors, listening to SK Plus. That is the complete After Schmoe fan to me, somebody that takes in all that content and just goes along with the ride with us.
And if you're here just to listen to our takes on Starbucks, you can get the hell out of here.
Who came in last week and fell in love with this show because they were like, you know what, I really like their takes on Starbucks and stuff, and now they're super disappointed. They're like Luke Jaggers, who was in our group text and said, they didn't even announce anything. Can you believe this? It's like, it's fine. Luke, I just watched the entire show and they didn't announce anything.
Luke represents everybody that we just shat on. Oh, that's great. Okay, Jay, where can people find you online?
You can find me at Jaye Williams, J the A, the Y, the E, on Twitter and Instagram. It's the same for both. You can also find me every single Friday over on the Sight and Sound podcast feed and on our YouTube channel. I do a music show there every single week. If you're listening to this on a Friday, first of all, Happy New Music Friday, but it's also December 1st, and it means it's also the kickoff of list season. I will be dropping my top 25 albums of the year on our YouTube channel. I'm going to be recapping it and talking about it and discussing it on the podcast. Today, if you're listening to this on the Friday, I will have released my Sight and Sound music episode where I look back on the 2016 top 10 album of the year list that I did and sort of moving some things around, maybe not. So if you are a music fan or you're interested in music, stop by and check it out. Ryan, where can they find you?
Speaking of lists, in addition to the music, we will be ready to announce our TV list fairly soon, because after Mr. Robot, TV season's pretty much done. There's only a couple shows I have to catch up on. I need to finish Mindhunter, I need to binge Handmaid's Tale, and then I think I'll have a pretty good grasp as to what 2017 was all about when it comes to TV. So that list is coming very soon from us as well. Movies will take a little bit longer, maybe into January, for me to have seen everything. But all that stuff is coming on Sight and Sound. You can also check out my latest movies episode where my Address the Council take that I gave to Christian is actually inserted in the Sight and Sound movie episode that I did earlier this week. It's called Hot Takes and Sausage. So you can check that out. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at WhatUpSnell. Listen to Brave the Storm on Spotify. And that's all I got. Thank you for dealing with me. My name is Tony Snelling, and I will see you next week.